joining us for this talk. My name is Shiram. This is
My
Irani.
name is Rani.
Just a quick intro. This is Rani's debut on the speaking circuit.
Thank you.
I really think she's just here to keep me honest, right? That I don't tell too many lies, but we'll see. So, the topic is human intelligence in the age of AI. Now, it's quick question. How many of you are anxious about AI and its effects on testing? So, quick hands up. Okay.
How many of you have been asked this question at least once in the past month?
And how many of you are sick of it? Okay, all right. So, AI has been around for a while, right? So if you look at AI started what I like to call the frustration era, right? And they were basically rule-based systems. You could play a bit of chess, so that meant it was intelligent, right? We adopted, right? Then came the predictive typing, your IntelliSense, autocomplete, spell checkers, right? So that was a step forward, but we never stopped, right? We kept going. So machine learning came in, right? With that came your, hey, Google's do this, hey, Alexa, turn off the lights, right? So yeah, it was pretty advanced already, and this is still, we're talking late 2010s, early 2020s, right? Not too long ago. But we had another phase very quickly come through, and this is the deep learning era, right? Image recognition. So you got self-driving cars coming in, right? So all our cars now start beeping, right? My car, for some reason, keeps braking. Apparently, I'm speeding, apparently getting too close to the car in front. I don't like it, right? I want control over my car, but yeah, so got to stick with it, right? And now we are in the augmented era, right? Gen AI, we got ChatGPT, we got Gemini, we got Claude, right? AI is everywhere, right? But what's the big deal? So haven't we had tools to help us before?
Yeah, we have had help before. When I started coding, right, back in the day, when coding was all about writing everything in the text editor, like Notepad or WordPad. Right? So there are no code colors, no syntax handling. It doesn't give you any hints, basically no help at all, right? So you have to type everything in, and if you make any errors, like if you miss a semicolon or a bracket, you wouldn't know it, right? So until you compile the entire code, right? At that time, the compiler would scream at you, asking you to fix your errors, right? So troubleshooting was a nightmare at that time, right? But then came our IDEs, right? So with the IDEs, we had IDEs like Visual Studio and Eclipse and IntelliJ, right? So they had color coding, right? So the syntax handling. Right? So it may sound very simple, but it made a huge difference, right? So suddenly you can see everything clearly, right? So the keywords are all highlighted in different colors, and the method names are all highlighted. Right? So troubleshooting, debugging is also much simpler with adding breakpoints, and you can go through the code line by line and troubleshoot those issues. And then we had IntelliSense, right? So those little pop-ups that gets displayed with suggestions, right? So asking you how you can finish your code before you can type in the full word, right? So with these options, it started predicting the method names and variable names. So you don't have to remember all those details. It's very helpful, especially when you work with large APIs and large libraries, right? Where you can't remember everything. You can simply type the words in and select the list from the IntelliSense pop-ups as well. It started feeling like, it felt like, the IDEs started thinking with us, making that, everyday task much easier. Now we are in the Copilot era, right? So we have tools like GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT, where it doesn't just generate one line of code or complete your current word, but rather than that, it can generate your entire function, right? So just based on the prompt that you're providing, right? So based on the message or the comments and the prompts that you're providing, it can generate the entire test script. You can even provide the code to it, and it can analyze the code and explain what that code is performing. And it can also generate, provide suggestions and improvements in that code. right? It's much more helpful in a way, when you have to work with complex tasks like generating SQL queries, or if you have to write regex patterns, or even if you have to convert your code to different programming languages, right? Copilot was helping there with all of those things.
But Rani, this is not the age of Copilot. This is the age of autonomous agents. You don't have to do anything, right? So you just say, hey, build this, it'll build it, test it, it'll test it. No? No? So, okay, all right, we should have, synced up before. Anyway, so then, is the AI helping at all?
Yeah. So AI is helping in specific areas, right? So we can look at some examples, right? So AI is helping us with self-healing, for example. Let's take a look at some real-world example here, right? So we took the production version of the Southwest Airlines website, but we took the archive of the 2013 version of the website. Right, and we just built a test scenario on that. So a simple scenario where we are selecting the departure city and the arrival city, and we are searching for the flights, right? And that's the test script, and it's running successfully, as you can see, right? And fast forward it to now. We can take the same application, the latest version of the same application, right? And with the latest version, as you see, the entire UI is revamped. Right? So it's freshened up now. As you can see, all the fields have changed. We don't have the same set of fields in the application anymore. But we are executing the same test scenario here. And AI can analyze the changes, right? So it can self-heal, right? So it has identified the departure city has now changed to depart, right? And we are just using the label-based approach here. Right? So it's looking at the labels. It's saying the arrival city or the airport code doesn't exist anymore. It's changed to arrive, right? Can identify that and continue with the test executions. Right? Now the baggage drop-down, the entire field, the drop-down is now changed to a radio button. Right? So it has identified that as well. So as you see, the self-healing can identify all of these changes and makes the test executions much simpler.
Cool. I do also see, right, there are other applications. So visual testing is one area where it's typically required a lot of advanced scripting and more technical skills to do, right? Because you had to deal with varying resolutions of your devices and applications, etc. Now with Gen AI, that's become quite accessible, right? So pretty easy. It is able to identify what really matters, right? So you're not spending a whole lot of time going through your faults, failures, etc. So you can get to the crux of it quite quickly. And of course, with the rise of LLMs, so we need to test what we are building, and unfortunately, right, it is not deterministic, right? So what that means is we have to rely on AI to test AI in a way, right? So for example, we tested ChatGPT. We said, hey, can you explain the principles of fluid mechanics, right? I would have no way of knowing if this answer was accurate or relevant, right? Luckily, AI can come in, right? Our autopilot's going to go against it. It's going to evaluate ChatGPT on a couple of factors, and let's see what it thinks. It's taking a long, hard look at it. So for answer relevancy, apparently ChatGPT scored 0.8 out of 1. It can do better, right? But at least on the I suppose, the truthfulness, it is quite good. It is sticking to what it was asked, so there's not enough hallucination or anything like that. So it is quite faithful, which is good to know, right? Now there's also other way, right? So all our applications are getting AI infused. You got chatbots in, so you got to have to test those chatbots. And again, it is non-deterministic. It is not going to be possible for you to code right exact inputs and expect exact outputs. Again, something like AI-based tools like Autopilot can help. You can check for all of these different response metrics, right? Another thing that AI is really good at helping out is when it comes to data generation. So say you have a sample file from production, you got multiple fields, each has their own characteristic, right? And now you have to inject 1,000 records of this into production. Into your test environment, right? It's a painful process. If you have to code it, there's a whole lot of effort involved. You can get Gen AI to help it, right? You can get Gen AI to say, hey, look at the sample file. Can you understand it, analyze it, right? And that's what we're doing here. So we just fed it a sample file. We're saying, hey, give me an output in CSV. And what should happen is, as part of the analysis, so it's identified not only the fields, it's also identified the rules. It says, okay, the patient ID, this is the format. So I haven't had to code it in. I haven't had to, feed it in. And this is something which is very manually intensive to do, right? Whereas it can identify that. It is able to find out, hey, look, first name's got, it should be non-null. It should be 1 to 50 characters, for example, right? You can, here, there's a zip code, all right? And I didn't have to say it's a zip code. I didn't have to pick up a library to say, hey, look, find out these are the zip codes, etc. Right? So again, Gen AI has got really good applications when it comes to synthetic data generation, right? And
Yep, AI can also help with test case generations as well. And so just based on your a simple prompt, right? So we can generate test steps just based on the prompt. So for example, here we are referencing to an Oracle application, and all the prompt, the input that we are providing here is just create a new invoice in Oracle application. That's all right. So directly here, we can also provide more information like, use random test data, right? So random first name or user ID or any data that we need to provide to create the new invoice. You can be more specific about what kind of test data or information that you want to use in your test case creation as well, based on the prompt we are giving. So that's all right. So with that input, just that one line of input to say, create a new invoice and reference it to Oracle application, right? So just based on that input, AI can help us generate the entire test scenario, right? So it's using, you enter the user ID. So to create a new invoice, first we need to log into the application, has identified that. It's entering the username, password, we're logging in, navigating to the invoices screen. We are identifying all the fields available in that invoice form, right? And it's filling those details one by one, right? So selecting a value from drop down or, filling the fields, all of those fields one by one. And you can see, it's generating all of those test steps. It keeps going on. Right? And all we had to do was just provide that one line prompt. Right? So AI can help with these kind of test case generations, the tedious process, the lengthy process of that test case generation as well. You don't have to work with the application and go through those entire flow by yourself. Rather than that, we can take AI's help to generate that entire scenario for us as well.
cool. One test case is good, but obviously I'm more interested in broader ones, right? How about autonomous exploratory testing, right? I can give a URL, I can test the whole website, tell me all the defects. No?
No.
Sure? Right? No? Okay, all right, maybe this. I'm going to give, just play around with my application. AI is going to monitor what's happening, it's going to monitor what's in the back end, virtualize services, build end-to-end tests.
No.
No? Okay, that's a bummer, right? That is a bummer. So AI has limitations.
Yeah, definitely. AI has limitations. Right? So AI, we have to use it, right? So we have to use it in a way that we have to work with the humans.
See, one of the problems, and I'm sure you've heard that in any talk that you heard today, right? Is everyone talked about context relevancy and maintaining context, et cetera, right? So that is the biggest problem we have with AI today, right? So yes, it's good at if you give it a certain amount of input and expect more precise output, it is good at it, right? But if you throw a requirements document at it and say, hey, find out test cases, you're going to spend a whole lot, a lot more time fixing what the mistakes it makes rather than actually, getting proper output, right? So, I used to work at Combank, and there was a tester there who was there for about 25 years. And so we were all about agile, right? And a new product owner came in, and they said, oh, you know what? I'm going to go and say, I want to make this change. Great, right? So we've done whole sprint planning, the dev's cutting code, and then he has a look at it, and he says, hey, it's not going to work. Like everyone stops, like, what do you mean it doesn't work? So we've done all the analysis. Like, no. So, there is that process that runs every Friday at 8 p.m. which will generate this file, which will go to that Dropbox, and that gets picked up by that process and that, right? And then it's like, it's not documented anywhere. No, it isn't, right? So testers usually are the kind of, the ones that have the most context about any kind of organization's end-to-end business process, right? So while you're building, you're looking at your own kind of, your house, so to speak, right? So you may know your street, right? Maybe a suburb, but then you don't get, beyond that, the visibility beyond that, right? So, but when it comes to testing, there is a whole lot of context that has to be taken in, and Gen AI currently is nowhere near it, right? So that's something that we all have to be conscious of when we are trying to employ Gen AI. Next one, AI can be too obedient, right? I can say, hey, find cat in picture, it will find it, right? It may say, hey, I'm not sure, and if I say there is a cat, it will find it. So if you're going to ask it, you give it something and say, hey, look, I need 100 tests for this, it will give you 100 tests. But, quality of it, accuracy of it, can't be guaranteed, right? So because it is a tool, end of the day, so we got to, treat it like that, right? So we can't go and expect AI to go and replace complete end-to-end processes, end-to-end workflows, etc. So you always have to be, considerate of that, right? Third one, AI is not that great at thinking outside the box, right? So if you give this to a tester, I can guarantee 900 or 100 people are going to go, first thing they're going to do is they're going to push that do not push button. If anyone disagrees, please put your hand up, right? But you give it to an AI, it's going to go play around with everything else, will skirt around it, until you're going to say, hey, look, can you try do not push? It's not going to do the do not push button, right? So it is not great at thinking outside the box, right? Again, if I take a real-world example, I used to lead the team which built the Albert payment terminal. So you would have known these, the yellow Android terminals, the first of its kind in Australia, right? And we had an A team. We were doing all the best practices, et cetera, and our devs prided themselves on saying, hey, no defects found, right? When it goes to testing, we've done everything, all, 80% plus unit testing, blah, blah, blah. We put it in. 1 hour later, in ALM, there's a defect lodged, right? Pretty shocked, and it's a P1, we go look at it. So essentially what it is it's a touchscreen based payment terminal, so we had to put in security features, and one of the security features was that when you go into pin entry mode, everything else gets disabled so that no other process can come in and look at where you're touching, etc. Right? So we had designed it that way. We were so proud that it was so good. But it just so happened that there is a battery icon in there. When the battery is low, if you press that low battery icon, it tries to trigger a process, and now you're in a deadlock and the device is completely dead. Because there's one process saying no other process should run, and that is something that only a human would have thought to click, and that's only something that comes from human instinct, right? Again, so AI is good at other things. He would have tested all the other flows well if he had it in that case, but I don't think he would have actually found that, right? So it is not that great at thinking outside the box. And it is still in grade 1, right, when it comes to ethics and bias. So here is the loan approval process. Start the application review. Supplicant queued. Approve. No. 2 strict checks, right? Luckily for me, I've always gone through the green channel, right? But having said that, again, AI would generate probably 100 tests for this. It will try different applicant combinations, different cuteness levels, right? That's a whole different problem, right? How it's going to rate the cuteness level, but it's going to do all of that, great. It is not likely to pick up and say, hey, look, but is this the right process to have, right? And so it is very important that we do not, we make sure we understand these limitations and we only employ AI in the kind of use cases that it can do well in, all right? So as it turns out, humans are better at some things. Yeah. So, right. So now, what is the future? Rani, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to work with the humans. Will have to work with the AI. We have to take the help of AI to enhance the things that we are performing at work. Right? So for example, right, so we have to allocate smart task selections, right? So we can allocate those long and tedious process to the AI, right? With the help of AI, right? So for example, right, so if we have to work with a log file, if you have to analyze a really lengthy log file and identify one particular line, right? So you can assign that to AI. You can take the help of AI there. You don't have to spend hours and hours trying to go through those log file and identify that issue, right? Similarly, if you have to work with, test a chatbot, right? So almost all the applications have chatbot now, and if you have to test that process, right? If you have to, generate 1,000 different combinations and see what the chatbot is going to reply, right? So you can take the help of AI in that case to, you can assign this task to AI rather than you going ahead and, creating those test scenarios.
So one question, right? So just based on this slide, can someone come up with how a human AIs work together to produce this? So I'm not good enough an artist to do the thing on the right, right? So basically the image on the right obviously is from ChatGPT. So, but the prompt was me, the creative prompt was from me, right? It did not get it right the first time. I had to work on it a couple of times, right? But then, so ultimately the hard task of creating that was done by Gen AI, right? But then having said that, the creative part was from me, all right? And that's how it has to be, right? So we always have to think about anything when we are going, we are looking at AI can, seem like a silver bullet. You can, use it to solve anything, but that's not the case. So you got to have to make a conscious decision of what you can, give to Gen AI versus what you do as a human, right? So what I like to call is the future is human-led, but it's AI augmented, right? So anything that you're going to do, which is going to involve AI, must have human in the loop. Now, this is actually coming through as a general guideline across all right, AI implementations now, right, even from all the major players out there. So now this is actually coming in. Now, if you look at, for example, at Axel Q, anything that you're doing from Gen AI perspective, so you're saying, hey, look, create a test case, it is not going to create it, execute it, and give you the result. It's going to say, hey, here it is. Do you want to review it? You click the button to say, yes, I accept. Only then you go on to the next step, right? You want to go and say, look, generate data. It's going to generate data, but it's not going to use it to run the test, right? It's going to say, hey, look, I've looked at your screens. These are all the things that you can do. But then every step, there is a mechanism for you to say, I think you got this wrong. These are the steps I want you to do instead, right? Actually, you missed these steps. Let me go and, add these in, right? So it is very important when you are designing AI-based kind of solutions that you always account for human in the loop, right? So we need to tame the dragon. And that actually comes from adapting your mindset, right? So say today, typically, if you are working on any activity, right, most of the time you're spending some time on design. A lot of it is spent on build. It could be you're building test cases, you're creating them, or you're automating them, you're using a tool to do it, you're writing Selenium scripts, but you're spending a lot of time there. Execution has always been it has been quite easy, so that's fine, right? But there's a lot of time in build, there's a lot of time in analysis of results, right? And obviously communication, right? So you need to communicate the results, understand what the requirements are, what you need to do, et cetera, right? Now going forward, what has to happen is we as humans have to start get in the habit of less of doing and doing more of review and refining, right? So essentially all of those activities, there is a way for you to get better output using Gen AI, right? But it is important that you give that human in the loop and you actually take time to review it, right? You make sure that you have the mechanism to refine it, because that's where right, it really comes down to getting the best outcomes. And this is really, it's very important to have this as a change in mindset, right? So essentially, there used to be, Google whisperers, right? So, hey, look, I'm great at prompt engineering, and I can find anything on Google. I can get the best results. Now, it's the age of AI whisperers. We all have to know how can we get the best out of AI, right? So, if I go back to that image that I drew of the human riding the dragon, right? Is anyone awake? No? So, which I got ChatGPT to do, which was the human riding the dragon. We need to learn how to tame the dragon, right? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, we wanted to spend more time on questions on this topic, right? So, I'll open the floor, and after a few questions, I do have a post-credits scene I wanted to share. All right. Sure. Hey.
I've got one question about the self-filling. So I don't have to shout. Thank you. All right. I got one question about self-filling. Like, as you show the demo, the self-filling will help you to execute faster. But when, for example, a self-filling will make a test pass because underlying application, the UI has changed, does the human would be on the loop to analyze that whether the self-healing AI, does it do the correct thing or not, or is there any bug inside? Actually, the UI element change is actually a bug, but is not expected. But AI actually do some intelligence and make the test pass.
So funky healing, right? So if you notice, that's a great question. If you look at this over here, and I'll try and pause it. See, there's a suggestion box there that actually says you want to accept the change or not.
Right.
Right? So every time, again, this is the human in the loop there. It's actually saying, hey, look, it's giving information. What I expected was a drop down. It is not a drop down. Possible match is a radio button with dollars. Right. Is it what it is? No, right? So if I didn't say accept over here, there is an option to say troubleshoot, where I could go into troubleshoot, and then I could go and say, hey, look, actually, this is what it is. Right? So it's a good pickup, but that's how the self-healing works right now. If it's if this is a live execution, right? Yep. If you're doing a remote execution, what happens is there is a flag that you can set at runtime to say, yes, I want self-healing to apply, right? In which case, the code never gets updated, but self-healing will get applied. And in the result, there will be an indicator, there will be a robot indicator that will say, hey, look, I've applied self-healing.
Right.
This is what it was before. This is what it is now. Do you want to accept it or not? Only after you accept it at that time, the script gets updated.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for clearing up.
No, yes. Thanks for a great question.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Hey there. Another demo question was with the Oracle. You had like the Oracle database example you showed, and you just wrote like a one-liner. I guess, is there any information on like what that Oracle database was, and maybe a bit more of like what is the context behind that you're allowed to then just give a one-liner so that it knows what you're talking about here? So
yep.
like,
Perfect question, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you notice there, we've selected reference as Oracle, right? Now we talked about how context is very important, right? So now with the autopilot, the approach we've taken is there is a concept of an application hub, right? Where you can create multiple applications and you can feed information about the application. It's a multimodal input. So you can actually give screenshots of the application, right? You can actually go and launch an analyzer, right? And you can go and do stuff and you can record the screens. You could have Figma designs, you could have screenshots, you could have process diagrams, right? Whatever kind of information that you can give, you can feed it. And so basically what it's doing is, we have actually given the Oracle screens before. That's a one-time activity. We've given those screens. That's how it knows that these are all the fields there. But then the thing to note is we didn't have to say what are the steps involved. So it is essentially just a bunch of screens. Generative AI is smart enough to know what the business process typically would look like. So we can actually go and, if I bring the platform up, there'll actually be an option for me to go and select just generic application. If I just say, can you create an invoice in a generic ERP application, it will take a stab at it. It will. That's where the hallucination comes in. It won't tell me that, hey, look, I don't know what you're talking about. It will say, yeah, I think usually if it's an invoice, there'll be an amount, there'll be a buyer, there'll be a vendor, there'll be a category, et cetera, et cetera. You'll come up with something, right? But then, so with this approach, we are able to have reference kind of applications which you can constantly evolve also. There's a newer version, you can feed in the new screens, you can feed in the new updated documents, right? And then it'll keep refining itself. Thank you. Any other questions?
So I can run over to you.
No? All right. So, see, while I was, playing with this, obviously, right, I was having some fun with ChatGPT, and when I wanted to talk, wanted to do the image for what was that? AI is too obedient. Right, that was my prompt. I said generate an image to demonstrate how I can hallucinate to satisfy a user instruction even if it is incorrect, right? And that's an image. That's a response, right? I found it fascinating. So immediately I took a screenshot because this is actually kind of like I didn't have to do this whole 30-minute talk, 40-minute talk to talk about all of the problems where I could have just put this in and it would have just sorted all of that, right? So. The reason why it's here is in the same chat history while I was doing this activity, my daughter came in. She wanted some help with her maths homework. All right, and that's the exact quadratic equation she gave me. And I told her to go and fetch me a coffee. While she went, I jumped on and I just quickly, because that's why I didn't have the wherewithal to open a new chat right. I just went. It was open. I just said, hey, how do I solve it? Because I want to be a smart dad, right? So I did this, and she came. I shift tabbed. She's going to learn it soon, anyway. And then I solved it. She was like, oh, awesome. How do you still remember this? I learned it. I was going to say 30 years ago now, like 10 years ago, right? I'm that young, right? Anyway, so that's what happened. And then later on, it had generated a couple other good images, but then this came about, and this came in. And here is the first problem that we talk about, context. I didn't actually give it too much context here. All it is I've been talking to it about, hey, here is some image context, prompt, give me an image, give me an image, give me an image. I just made one slight deviation in that same session to just ask one mathematical question. That's it, right? And then later on, it was okay for 2-3 images, and then this came up. So that context problem, how severe it is, right? It is, we got to be very conscious of that, right? And the second one is, I reviewed it, luckily. I didn't have an automated process which just took the image and put it in my PowerPoint, or else it would have been a root chalk for all of us, right? Luckily, I did do a review, so I was able to see that this is not working. I tried to refine the prompt a few times. I still wouldn't give me what I wanted, right? It just kept digging in, and then at a certain point, I say, you know what? No, it's all right. Give me an image. Give me a cloud with draw a cat on it, and then it gave that. That was fine, right? But this is a classic real problem. This is not my tool's AI problem, not another tool's AI problem. This is the core problem with generative AI at the moment. So it's a core limitation, right? And I don't want to be too harsh on it, right? I don't know how many of you noticed my disclaimer right at the beginning, right? Where some AIs were, harmed, which is, I'm not trying to make it all sound bad, but the whole idea is that even though this sounds like the age of AI, human intelligence still trumps it, and it is very important that we take, ownership of that, we take cognizance of that, right? So there is a lot of right? I'm sure you're bombarded with right information left, right, and center about especially from senior leadership, where all they're hearing is Gen AI is there to just change everything, right? So you don't need devs, you don't need testers, you don't need BIs, you just need one cross-functional entity who is going to just whisper to the AI, and the AI will do everything, which is not the reality, right? So all of us need to have this in mind. All of us needs to right, keep this in mind when we are still adopting AI for whatever we're doing. Cool? Great. Any other questions, or we can wrap it up?
Prizes.
Yeah, sure. No other questions? Yeah. So let me make it a hard one. All right. So in one of the slides where there was an AI and a child. So an AI was given a tedious task, and the child was doing something. So I'm going to actually ask, it's a two-part question. You got to get both correct to win it. All right. So what was the child doing? And okay, what was so it's a three-part question now. So what was the robot doing? Huh? No. Sorry? Reading the logs? So there were a lot of books in there? Yeah. So how many books were in there? Now you're all guessing, right? So you show 5. All right. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to switch the image. All right. It is 5. All right. So now it's going down to lucky draw. All right. I want to try. So it's between you and him. So I'm going to say, whoever catches this wins the prize. How about that? Oh! Okay, one more. No. Sorry. The prize. It's rigged, I know. Thank you. Thanks, Ronnie, for contradicting me throughout. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.